Shout out to Dip Metaverse, Lil Bidman, and Neo X Tricks. In my opinion, with the research, this is Jasmy's master plan all along. There's a reason why they mentioned that $17 KPI target for 2026. I'll show you all receipts to back up my hypothesis with real research on why it all matters. Consider sticking to the end of this one. You're definitely going to want to take the time to listen to all the presented material. Let's get right into it. So, for one, it's this. And again, Dip Metaverse doing it big as usual. He pointed out a long time ago, July 24th to 2022, the 107 million PDL users by 2026 was in fact mentioned in Coinbase Learn and Earn. Keep in mind, everybody, Hara just recently posted some things about Coinbase and, of course, Jasmy, and Jasmy being used as basically collateral. That's an outline for another day. Many people are covering it, but whatever the case be, that focus on Asian markets, that was always big. Jasmy's plans to expand its business by partnering with leading local companies with the goal of 107 million active users, of course, by 2026. And you'll find out how that adds up here as we get more into the outline. Because, again, this is really eye-opening. And that is this. It's Bajit Group. When we go to the list of the clients here, you will see, for example, an area of focus on Marubeni. Now, why would that be? And did they make any new recent news that would be eye-opening to you and worth your time? Well, guess what? The answer is yes. So focus on this outline will be Marubeni, of course, Sony, and especially Panasonic. As we get further into this, I want to share some key things with you. And that is, when you look into businesswire.com, there is an update. And again, for a lot of us, this flew under the radar. May 7, 2025, Marubeni and ExxonMobil's low-carbon ammonia deal marks major step in unleashing new energy supply. ExxonMobil, at least at that time, will supply approximately 250,000 tons of low-carbon ammonia annually on a long-term basis to Marubeni. The deal will drive new energy supply, support jobs, and strengthen United States and Japanese industrial cooperation. So take you further down into this, I want you to pay attention to where it says specifically this, and that is how Marubeni will supply the ammonia mainly to Kobe Power Plant, a fully owned subsidiary of Kobe Steel, and Marubeni has also agreed to acquire the equity stake, of course, in ExxonMobil's low-carbon hydrogen and ammonia facility. Now, this part, it says, of course, by the president of ExxonMobil. By using American-produced natural gas, we can boost global energy supply, support Japan's decarbonization goals, and create jobs at home. Our strong relationship with Marubeni sets the stage for delivering low-carbon ammonia from the United States to Japan for years to come. This whole thing about Marubeni. Now, we could take a super deep dive into this, but again, it gets really eye-opening. Their connections to Bajit, and of course, Bajit, as we know, with Jasmy and even Sony, right? That's a big deal.
If managing your crypto feels like solving a puzzle, it's time to switch to Decent Wallet. So just a few taps, you can manage, track, and secure your crypto with unmatched ease. And here's the best part. Grab your Decent Wallet at a discounted price by using the referral link below. Don't miss out on making your crypto experience smoother and more secure.
Here's another update, again, for you guys that might not even be aware of some of these things. Shout out to seekingalpha.com. They state, June 7th, just a few days ago, Marubeni undervalued and Buffett certifies Japanese trading house. I will state this. A while back, I did one of the most deepest of deepest dives, if you guys are remembering some of it, in regard to Warren Buffett and his investments specifically into Japan. It gets really, really interesting because even in this key finding, you see from Shatan Wooden, well, he points out Marubeni remains a compelling buy as Japanese equities gain favor amid U.S. market uncertainty. Of course, supported by Buffett's increased stake and attractive valuations, but the company boasts strong cash generation. I want you to focus on that. Progressive dividends. I want you to focus also on that because at the end of the day, we understand derivatives and the whole concept of cash flow is going to play a big factor, obviously, when it comes to the cryptocurrencies that we're invested in. With a focus on portfolio optimization and inflation hedged assets, think about that term. Marubeni is well positioned for continued profitability and shareholder returns in a shifting global landscape. All right, now look at this for a moment. If you were to do a basic search on some of this key stuff, well, one of the things it mentions is this keyword, and it's insurance. Now, why would I point this out? Hear me out. Differentiating itself from other trading houses engaged in mainly in import and export activities, Marubeni has diversified its business model to deliver project development and strategic investment activities in addition to trading brokering. Thus, in addition to product sales and commissions, its revenue streams include service fees and investment returns as exemplified by its overseas subsidiary, Marubeni America Corporation, which acts as a major financier, investor, and organizer of global trade, providing specialized services such as logistics, insurance, that's why it's highlighted, and business consulting. Who was a business consultant for basically KPMG? Well, it's basically Hiroshi Harada, aka Hara-san. He, of course, is part of Jasmy, but he was once a business consultant, of course, with KPMG. So when you ask that question to, obviously Google, it says yes, Hara was in fact a business consultant with KPMG. Specifically, before joining Jasmy, he worked 11 years at KPMG, a ZSA LLP, specializing in statutory auditing for listed companies and IPO support services. Okay, so we understand that he, of course, transitioned to the blockchain crypto space after joining Jasmy, and of course, where he's at now with Junction. But don't ever forget about some of these things. Why even mess with it? Why even point it out, Maximus? Well, it gets better. Marubeni, as you see here, was in fact acquired by Berkshire Hathaway. Over 5% of the stock in the company, along with four other Japanese trading houses, over the 12-month period ending in, of course, August 2020. In October 2021, Marubeni invested in B2U Storage Solutions. It's a Santa Monica-based startup that reuses EV batteries to a battery storage system. Now, I'll come back for you guys for this moment. You ever wonder why Jasmy strategically positioned themselves, for example, with Panasonic? Does that ever strike you that there's reasons for that other than just, hey, we have a Panasonic partnership? Have you ever looked deeply into Jasmy and why that was a thing? We're going to do just that, just in case you were brand new to this channel. Let's take you into this. I want you guys to see some of the other key things. Because back in 2022, it's interesting to see that even then, Marubeni won the seabed rights of Scotland to construct an offshore wind farm. They partnered with SSE Renewables and Copenhagen Infrastructure Partners. In addition, Marubeni working on Japan, again, key thing here is the country of Japan's first offshore wind farm, as well as floating turbine demonstrations. All right, keep that in mind, fresh in your mind in regard to Marubeni and also how I mentioned B2U Storage Solutions, because you clearly see that they have locations in California. In fact, they use its patented EPS technology to deploy EV battery packs in large-scale grid-connected energy storage systems. All right, remember how we talked about Tadashi Morita and his patents a while back? Again, if you're new to my channel, I can't expect you to watch all the videos at once, but they're there in the video section for a reason. We've done a lot of deep dives about the significance of those key people, Tadashi Morita, his patents, and so on. So as I jump further into this, I want you guys to understand it's basically making a timeline about this and why it matters to you. Again, why does it matter to you? Well, BTU reaches 25 megawatts per hour storage capacity at California facility with 1,300 used Honda and Nissan EV batteries. Don't you feel as though that's more than coincidental? And don't you feel as though that's kind of interesting if you've been following Jasmy and the Panasonic thing, and of course the whole thing with Sony and Honda and Afeela? Take you to this next part. CNCDA, of course, demanded cease and desist on Afeela vehicle sales. Now, if you don't know about this, of course, Sony Afeela, Sony Honda Afeela. They were showcasing these vehicles out in LA beginning of this year. And again, supposed to roll out by 2026. Again, that whole thing about 2026 really makes you wonder. Gets good, I swear, it really does. As I get further into this, CNCDA accuses Honda and, of course, Sony Honda Mobility of violating state franchise laws. Oh no. By bypassing dealerships and selling directly to consumers. All right, that was posted May 20, 2025. Again, why even bother with some of this? Well, it's, again, the findings. Because, as you know, we see here this guy, and he basically sends this letter, if you will, to the American Honda Motor Company and Sony, basically demanding that immediately stop direct consumer sales of Afeela brand vehicles in California. Well, he took it all the way up to the governor's office, right? Gavin Newsom and so on. But this statement, Sony Honda's rollout of selling Afeela vehicles directly to consumers is unlawful effort to circumvent the state's protections. So at the end of the day, I mean, is Afeela really going to be in a lot of trouble? Well, or I should say, when I got more further into this, I saw kind of like, it doesn't seem like it's going to be the end of the world, but for me, it seems as though it's obviously a problem that they're going to address, because the Afeela vehicles at Honda's facility in Ohio, alongside Honda and Acura models, basically, you have to keep in mind that the companies are now in direct violation of this particular assembly bill, which is called 473. And of course, the bill backed by CNCDA was signed to law, again, Gavin Newsom, and reinforced those prohibitions, against manufacturers selling directly to consumers through affiliates. Now, will they solve this? Will they address it? Is it a done deal? I don't see an update about this. Where the case be, CNCDA is fully prepared to take legal action, of course, American Honda and SHMA, if they do not immediately stop directly marketing and selling, of course, these vehicles in California. All right, a little bit more about this. You're going to see here, specifically, the whole thing of Afeela 1. Now, it was a prototype that was originally shown in Japan back in 2023, but notice what it says here. It says, basically speaking, that in the first half of 2025, they had pre-orders, okay? And while initial shipments were delivered to customers in North America in the spring of, set for spring 2026, you have to keep in mind there's a lot of cameras on this thing, 45 cameras, sensors. These are all IoT devices outside the vehicle to ensure safety and security. We'll utilize Qualcomm Snapdragon SoC hardware. All right, that's important to point out. I covered some deep dives about the connection of Qualcomm, of course, to Jasmy, NeoX, Trix did, some other guys in the community, right? So again, I want you guys to keep in mind that it's the North American plants moving forward. The car will be manufactured at one of Honda's North American plants. All right, well, if you go over to shm-afeela.com, it shows here some updates and recent updates. Afeela times Karate Kid Legends, a legendary day at Century City. You have, for example, May 1st to 22nd, the whole thing at Gran Turismo 7. Some of you guys are real big fans of Sony PlayStation, right? So, again, some updates. Sony Honda Mobility of America celebrates grand opening of the Afeela studio. And that was back in April 1st. And, of course, some of the other ones even out in San Francisco Bay Area. Now, do we have anything from Afeela? We do. This is interesting. The official account for Afeela. Look what it says here. Sony Honda's Mobility new brand Afeela represents a new relationship between people and, of course, mobility. Obviously, Little Bidman follows that and a lot of other research. But here's what's really eye-opening. June 10th, FIFA Club World Cup. Afeela curated a match day playlist to hype up your drive and set the tone. All right. Well, look at this. Soccer, for example, right? Some of you guys in the community, I'm not going to highlight the negative guys, but some of you guys in the community don't like the idea that Hara, for whatever reason, shares some things about the fan token. And I, of course, did the whole thing about the fan token. Didn't get a lot of views. Nobody really cared, to be honest. But don't you find it interesting? Here's why you should find it interesting. Hara reposted this. Literally, was it 2 days ago, give or take? He states that Like it says here in the interview, Sagan Tosu, who returned to his J1 this year, will take the challenge of the fan token and Jasmy Inc. to team up, create a new strategy to connect clubs, communities with Web3. Interview with Jasmy Inc. CFO, Mr. Harada, right? Hiroshi Harada. Harada. The future of the J League and the region will change from here. All right. I've stated this, or I should say, pointed this out before. I feel as though that Jasmy, moving forward, especially in the last video, would be kind of like implementing, if you will, what Chili's does. Now, of course, Chili's has their own blockchain, don't get me wrong. But again, Jasmy has so many different sectors that they're getting into, right? It's not just one key area, it's multiple uses for the utility moving forward. So, for one, this adds up 100% with what you recently saw from Afeela. That's why I showed you the whole thing from Afeela and jumping over to here. People say connect dots, call it what you want. Where the case be, it is important. As I pull up more about this and why it matters to you, well, again, where do we go from here? Well, this is what's interesting and eye-opening. Back to the whole thing of Marubeni. As we see here, Marubeni and Panasonic Holdings agree to establish a joint venture, provide fleet management services for commercial EVs, aiming to provide integrated support for introducing and operating those EVs. Of course, originally cited May 19, 2023, but you do see them, of course, with Panasonic. Now, again, why even bother with some of this? Well, that leads us to this next part. And in the next part, basically speaking, it's going to be about what you're going to see here with a deep dive I did a while back. Because in this deep dive I did a while back, it's Warren Buffett on raising stake in Japanese trading houses. It was confounded by, again, the opportunity. This is about roughly 5 minutes. Draw your own conclusion about this, and then we'll come right back and I'll show you some things that are, again, very, very eye-opening, to say the least. Smash that like if you haven't done so already, or consider doing so. If I still need to earn it at this point, hey, I get it. But nonetheless, I do appreciate that. Appreciate you guys. Let's get right into it.
Why did this trip happen, and why did those investments happen to begin with?
Well, the investments began maybe close to 4 years ago, and I was looking at company after company, as I do every day, and I just thought these were big companies. They were companies that I generally understood what they did. Some was similar to Berkshire in that they owned lots of different interests, and they were selling at what I thought was a ridiculous price, particularly the price compared to the interest rates prevailing at that time. And so I started buying all five of the five largest trading companies, and by my 90th birthday, August 30th of 2000, whatever it was.
2020.
Yeah, and we had bought just somewhat over 5% of each company, and we were buying identical amounts. So we announced at that time that we bought this 5% interest in each of the five. I wrote a letter to the CEOs of each of the companies saying the same thing, that we would never buy, Berkshire would never buy more than 9.9% without their consent. And that was my word. It was Berkshire Hathaway's word, and they all welcomed us in, and their results have exceeded our expectations since we purchased the group. I think their dividends on average have gone up 70% or something like that, and we now own 7.4% of each of the companies, and I just Greg and I together, we wanted to come over and talk to them, and so we got on a NetJets plane and plug and flew over, and we have had a terrific time meeting each of the five sequentially over the last 2 days, and it's been fascinating. And we feel even better about what we couldn't feel better about the investment. And over that time, we've sold periodically yen-denominated bonds. So more or less, we don't do it precisely, but we've insulated ourselves from exchange rate changes. So it's worked out very well so far, but we'll be in these stocks 10, 20 years. I mean, we weren't buying with the idea they go next week, next month, next year. But we have had revelations about each of the companies that, Greg and I are just fascinated by it.
Right.
Was it worth the trip?
Oh,
Absolutely. It's been a great trip. I mean, they've been exceptional in how they've communicated, both with their performance, but just their approach to business.
What did you learn since you've been here?
I think the thing that stands out very quickly to us is they came to the meetings wanting to build a relationship and strengthen it. So they understand we've invested in their companies. But from the very get-go, when we start the conversations with them, they come each with their own story, and it's around building trust in that relationship with them.
Meaning what? That there are other potential deals that you all could do together?
We've clearly made it, each time we've met with them, we said we very much like the core investment, but to the extent they can identify an incremental opportunity that we could do with any of the 5 companies, we would very much evaluate it quickly. And Warren highlighted the bigger the better, and that he'll answer the phone on the first ring.
and we'll never run out of money. I mean, they can call us anytime, and it may be that what they have interests us, it may not, but they'll have an answer, bingo. And if we make a deal, the money will be on the way, and we look forward to it. And I'm just astounded at how they're all different and they're all the same at the same time. I mean, we learned about 5 different individual companies, but it was not exactly what we expected. It was better than we expected in every respect.
People look at this and say, okay, Warren Buffett is putting his stamp of approval on investing in Japan, basically. Is that an accurate read?
Well, it was an accurate read, but it was an accurate read a couple of years ago, too. I mean, I was confounded by the fact that we could buy into these companies and, in effect, have an earnings yield of maybe 14% or something like that, with dividends that would grow. They actually grew 70% during that time. And the people were investing their money at 0.25% or nothing. And that 0.25%, if they put it out for many years, wasn't going to grow, and the 14% was more likely to grow than not. And if that didn't look like something sensible to me, that's as easy as it gets. But it's turned out to be better than I thought it would be.
Okay, welcome back. In my opinion, that is very eye-opening, and a lot of people feel as though that Warren Buffett has no ties to crypto, but in reality, it's basically the indirect connections, as basically pointed out. And hopefully, you pay attention to the part where it mentions Marubeni on that stock list, right? And he, of course, he has about 5%, as pointed out from the Wikipedia research and so on. And that's big. That's, of course, worth pointing out. As I take you further into some recent updates, I want to point out this other key thing. And what you're going to see here is from a citation from businesswire.com. Now, we're getting a little bit more recent, aren't we not? May 19th, and again, Business Wire is a Berkshire Hathaway company. So May 19th, Soracom and Marubeni announced strategic IoT collaboration and agreed to establish joint venture. As you see here, the new organization will support IoT, again, Internet of Things, MVNO capabilities in Japan, and of course, beyond. Now, what was eye-opening for me was when I saw the whole thing about the company will take over MVNO business of Marubeni Network Solutions, a network outsourcing company under Marubeni Digio. It will operate as joint venture with 51% investment from Soracom. Now, I get it. Some of you guys are going to ask, well, what's Soracom? We're going to get into that in a bit. But what I want to also point out for you guys is that Marubeni Network is one of only few of the MVNOs in Japan and operates MVNO business using NTT Docomo's network. Soracom is a full MVNO that provides services across 185 countries using, for example, KDDI. And I know it's a lot of abbreviations here, but if you're wondering what MVNO basically is, well, on a simple search, MVNO stands for Mobile Virtual Network Operator. It refers to a company that provides mobile services but does not own the underlying wireless infrastructure itself. Think about that for a moment. All right, let's jump back into this. I want to point out some of the other key things. And as you see here, by collaborating with Marubeni Group, Soracom will provide mobile services, including higher quality IoT communication. So focus on that higher quality IoT communication. Why would you want to do that? Well, if you go over to Soracom.io, IoT SIM card and eSIM with global connectivity. No, this is not the My Number card, but nonetheless, kind of interesting to see some of this. So Soracom helps technology innovators connect devices over to cellular to a secure global network where there's no limit to how big you can scale. Okay. Again, I know it's a lot to take in, but you got to keep in mind why we point out some of these things. So I want to give a shout out again to this guy. It's been a while. Neo X Tricks. I hope you're doing well, especially if you happen to watch this. Neo is one of few people who have ever pointed out Soracom. This is interesting because it was eye-opening to me. Okay, so for one, in the research, what does he have? It's the vision of democratizing IoT according to Ken Tamagawa. He's the CEO of Soracom in Japan, and of course focused on innovation and accessibility of IoT technologies for businesses of all sizes. The connections with Jasmy are facilitated by SourceNext, co-investor and partner of Soracom, which of which Kun Takiado is an outside director. Partnership program with Soracom regarding technological business plans with Jasmy. Handshake there, right? That's the utility. But for reference, Soracom is a connectivity platform and service provider that enables businesses to connect and manage their IoT devices globally. The main investors and partners are basically World Innovation Lab. It's a cross-border Japanese-American venture capital company. Nippon Gas, SourceNext Corporation. That's a Japanese technology company. Hitachi, which we should all know about by now. Seacom Co., which is a Japanese security company. And of course, Sony, right? So that's pretty major, to say the least. And of course, he did his research back about roughly this time last year. Okay, that is pretty major. And nonetheless, I'm going to jump to this next part because he gets into the weeds of this. So he states back in 2023, NeoXTrix points out that in his previous posts, at least then, right, he saw the relationship between Apex, Jasmy, and Soracom. Please find the necessary information about it. All right, so we're going to do just that. And for instance, check this out on the other particular slide as we blow it up. Well, what do you see here? It says specifically that Soracom, he's back in 2021, is in fact a global provider of advanced IoT, like I just showed recently on that new updated website. So advanced IoT connectivity, today, or at least then, announced a new partnership featuring 6 major participants in global technology ecosystem. Think about that. And think about where Mr. Buffett has positioned himself. Bottom part, Nippon Gas SourceNext Corporation, let's go down to that part, for example, has new investors in this round, and they include Hitachi, and of course, like you see there, Seacom Co. and Sony Group Corporation. Don't you feel as though that's more than coincidental at this particular point? I get it. But as Billy Mays would say, wait, there's more. Let's take it back to 2025. Let's take it to the now. Equity investment in Gearbulk Holdings AG, the world's largest open hatch shipping operator. How long ago was this, Max? June 2nd, 2025. Look what it says here. Marubeni reached an agreement to invest in Gearbulk Holdings, world's largest open hatch shipping operator headquartered in Switzerland. Now, I pointed this out a while back. I don't know if people remember this. A while back, I mentioned if you're paying attention to VeChain and you're paying attention to XDC, should also include Jasmy in the mix. Now we're seeing how some of this stuff comes into fruition. As you also see here, you get further down to this, look what it says here. The investment will be executed upon the fulfillment of certain preconditions. Following the investment, Gearbulk will become an equity method affiliate of Marubeni. Of course, you see these gentlemen here, big players and so on. But again, if I was just jumping into this video, I would immediately think of something like XDC and what they do. Guess what? Say what you want. Marubeni very well is Jasmy's key plug to what? Yeah, global trade from a bigger perspective. All right. Well, this is interesting because when we get further into this, we take it to the next page. And basically speaking, as of January 2025, Gearbolt became consolidated subsidiary, of course, of Mitsuosk Lines. But Marubeni, through its Singapore-based subsidiary, has been engaging in the vessel ownership for many years and has built strong partnerships with Gearbolt for 20 years. All right, check this out. This gets good. Marubeni Insurance and Logistics. I point this out because of the Jasmy roadmap, and I'll show you why that's important. So you have a wealth of experience here, but look how many times they mention insurance. Marnix Europe Limited is an independent general insurance intermediary. Marnix handles all lines of commercial insurance, but has particular strengths in marine, construction, liability, of credit insurance through business activities of the Marubeni Group. And as pointed out here as well, business areas. Definitely highlights what? Insurance and logistics. That's interesting. And also energy and environmental infrastructure. That's also interesting. And of course, this part about energy in itself. Interesting. This part gets honorable mention. Forest products. Remember how we mentioned Yoshida? And for example, I don't know if you guys remember some of these outlines. Dreamforce? Do you now see how that came together? I know this is becoming quite the deep dive, but that's what I do. As I take it to this next part and why it matters to you, I want you to keep in mind a little bit more about the whole Marubeni plug. Because when we get into this, what do you see here? Well, it's the welcoming of it all. And again, a little bit more on the research. So what you'll see here is more references to, of course, insurance. And what you see here also mentions that Marnix Europe is a subsidiary of Japanese trading company Marubeni Corporation, part of the rapidly growing Matrix insurance broker family. They started off in London back into 1989, but whatever the case be, robust history. UK, Europe, Middle East, Japan, Asia, so on and so forth. All right, check this out. Lil Bidman posted this back in April 28th. Jasmy releases the 2025 roadmap. So many other influencers cover this. I try not to cover the same thing everybody else covers. Try to make myself a little bit unique, nothing against other people. But if you were to look at the roadmap, here's what's important. What's very, very important. Look what it mentions here, everybody. It's the phased approach. And this is what I want to point out for you guys. As you see in the timeline, what does it literally say in regards to insurance? Q2, right? Jasmy app alpha version release products for insurance agents. Now do you understand how some of this adds up? Oh, it just says insurance. That's all you have, Maximus. No, that's not all I have. I want to point out some other key things here. And of course, that's the whole thing of this. So we pull this further into why it matters to you. Well, what do you see here? July to September 2025. July is next month, ladies and gentlemen. You see here, for example, Jasmy App Alpha, release of the app platform, insurance agent products, collaboration partnerships, I should say, with local governments and sports teams. Again, back to the whole thing of Afeela. To me, that's why I pointed out. That makes sense. And of course, as I take to this next part, Jasmy App Platform targets industries like insurance. Literally just says it, with products for agents rolling out in Q2. Supports collaboration with local governments and against sports teams. Enhanced community engagement. Pull this up for you here. Let's point this out. Honda, of course, from electrifiednews.com, has a loyal following in the U.S. market. And like it says, Honda's U.S. advantage, which Honda hopes will follow the brand as drivers convert from ICE to EV. New 100% U.S. tariffs against Chinese EVs ensure that Honda will not have to compete with China in the U.S. market. Okay. With the exception, of course, of Polestar and Volvo. That's interesting. And of course, here's why it's interesting. Because as we know, back in 2022, Panasonic and Honda, because some of you guys are going to ask, did Panasonic ever do anything with Honda? The answer is yes. Panasonic and Honda has battery spending, at least with LG, $8 billion at that time on new U.S. battery plants. I'm telling you flat out, this is why I say Jasmy had a master plan from the beginning. Okay? And what it says here, Honda and LG Energy Solutions announced new joint venture that will see them spend combined $4.4 billion to set up a new U.S. battery plant. Well, TSMC, ladies and gentlemen, has a plant actually right here in Phoenix, Arizona. I hope to go down there with Rue Black and basically possibly do some interviews. All right, it's going to take a while to land that, but again, Project Stargate 2025. That was $500 billion. That's a $500 billion invested in American infrastructure, and $100 billion of that went to a plant. Which plant? TSMC, right here in Phoenix, Arizona. That's so you guys don't like us saying insane, but that's insane, right? Let's pull up another thing about this. So again, let's highlight this. So here's a Grok conversation for you guys. I decided to ask Grok this. And basically I said, if Jasmy reaches the 107 million PDL goal sometime in 2026, with 500 data per user and close to 100% of the Jasmy token circulation, what would be the ballpark price per token? Right, kind of hard to do that, right? But whatever the case be, they kind of came up with some of the answers. And so the ballpark price estimate, assuming Jasmy achieves the 107 million PDL goal with 500 data value per user and 100% token circulation by 2026, the ballpark price per Jasmy token would be approximately $17.87. My goodness, this aligns with community estimates on platforms like Reddit, where users cite Jasmy's KPI and PDR to project a similar target price. And of course, at the bottom, they're like, yeah, highly speculative, blah, 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 right? We get that. The other area I want to point out is this. I said, well, Grok, how many PDL users are there currently for Jasmy? Now they're going to say there's no public information, but some sources mention metrics like Jasmy coin holders, 79,648. Now, if we just look at that, we would come to the conclusion that we're not going to reach that 107 million users by 2026. There's no way. Are you sure about that? Next thing I want to jump into is this. And basically, second to last question. How many cars are Sony, Honda, Afeela hoping to sell by 2030? And again, please don't narrow this down where we literally containerize this in itself, where it's like you're only focusing on Honda, Sony, because Jasmy is so much more than just that, obviously, with IoT and their robust connections to a lot of other key things. But whatever the case be, just that disclaimer. So look what it says. Basically not available, but I said, well, how many cars are Sony, Honda, Afeela hoping to sell by 2030? Can you get deeper with it? They do get deeper with it. I'm not going to read all this because it's a lot, but this part was interesting. While Sony Afeela's sales target by 2030 is not publicly disclosed, for Honda itself, they plan on doing 30 models, 2 million annual production by 2030. So basically that's like 10 million annually. So by 2030, that's going to be like 10 million just through Honda itself. Okay. All right. Well, check this out. If Honda's EV market is 2 million annually by 2030, this means 10 million. Jasmy will obviously have more than just their plug to Sony or Honda. But even if they don't hit over 100 million PDL users by 2026 and only reach 10 million PDL users, what would be the ballpark of what we could expect the Jasmy token to be worth with just 10 million PDL users and almost 100% of the Jasmy token in circulation? And of course, they're like, it's kind of hard to do that, right? But guess what? Here's the conclusion. They have ballpark estimate. Conservatively speaking, they're stating that like $7 cent target. Again, this is just from that one particular sector, if you will. Optimistic is 20 to 30 cent rollout. I should say rollout, but anyway, 20 to 30 cent target. Assumes a bull market. Well, come on. You think we're going to be in the bear forever? Strong Honda EV integration and broader IoT adoption. Clearly, you see there's going to be a lot of IoT adoption. All right. And basically speaking, there's caveats to anything. But in their final answer, they're optimistic, but they feel as though that you reach a market cap of 5 to 7.5 billion. Now I know people in our community feel as though that this is, being a lot more conservative. I know that, for example, Rob Mash, shout out to him. We're gonna do some collaborations here soon. He pointed out conservative price targets, I think, basically in this region. For me, it's so much more bigger than that. For me, I look at it as, and again, no knock on these guys, because most of you guys don't see eye to eye with other people. We don't have to see eye to eye with each other. But for me personally, I do feel as though, even being really conservative, I don't see why it wouldn't be over, for example, what a lot of you guys are hoping for, which is just simply $1. Because we know that Jasmy is so much more than, for example, Sony Afeela and the whole thing with Honda, and obviously call centers, and, for example, the secure PCs. I mean, we're talking multiple layers of utility, literally talking about a token used for the future, especially to help benefit the local society of Japan, but there's other countries. You combine that on a worldwide scale, you cannot just put this into a little box of, hey, Sony Afeela. That's one of the main key points I want to point out to you. But for me personally, it all matches up to that $17 KPI price target that was mentioned in the original white paper about 2026. Hopefully that gave you a broader perspective of what I think was the master plan all along. Simply do me a solid if you listen to the entire outline and type into the comments this key word, and that is research. Because at the end of the day, let's face it, most don't do that. They don't have the time, and I understand. We live in a very busy society. Type in research, and I'll know that you listen to the entire outline, because it does help me realize who's really paying attention. Thanks again for tuning in, everybody. Know what you have, know why you hold it. The research trumps FUD. 110%. We'll see you on the next one.